Hello, good afternoon. Are you having fun? Okay. Good. My name is Tatiana Ruggiero. Just a couple of messages. If you are international travel like me, whose English is not her, in my case, first language, we have services. We have a QR code with an app that you can translate the sessions automatically in your phone, which is brilliant. I've been using that a lot, so encourage if you haven't. So we're very excited to introduce to the next session, just to make sure, is this the one that you want to be, right? Good. Excellent. So I'm going to pass the mic to Chris Kemp and Jonathan Massey, like Sassy. So good luck, guys.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Are we nice and sleepy now that lunch is gone and we're kind of, you ready to sit down and have somebody tell you a story? You're in the right place. So welcome to the session. It's 90% in 30 days, Cisco's journey to rapid macOS adoption. My name is Christopher Kemp. I'm a systems engineer for the macOS Cisco program. I've been in IT since 1999. Before that, I was a sound engineer before I shifted to IT. Anyway, I've worn a lot of hats, done a lot of different things, but I have been a Mac and a Jamf administrator for a good 15 years now. Started out by managing a couple of hundred small video editing workstations as a side position, and eventually evolved up to a couple companies to a full-time position managing desktop Macs, currently for Cisco.
Hi.
And Jonathan?
Hi. My name is Jonathan Massey. I'm a software engineer with the macOS Cisco team. I didn't have a cool job like a sound engineer. I was a poor guy who worked in a public education institution, and they were like, hey, you have enough ability to run a Mac lab at an elementary school. But I ended up working my way up, becoming a desktop admin for that same school district, running 60,000 devices and managing 45,000 users. I did that for a couple years and changed the direct trajectory of my life. The Cisco opportunity came, and I've been with Cisco for the past 3 years now.
All right. So
we wanted to provide you a quick look at our organization, just to kind of give you some perspective about our company. So Cisco currently employs 85,000 employees. We have about 128,000 stakeholders across 80 countries. So as you can see or not see from the chart, we kind of have an even split amongst our employee base. A little over a third of the org, engineering. The next largest percentage was sales and marketing, and then there's customer experience and corporate functions taking up the rest. A little under half of our company operates in the Americas, while about 17% is in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and 37% are in the Asia, Pacific, Japan, China area. The company services a large number of devices, and really the lifeblood of the company is our ability to connect with each other, as you can see by the ungodly amount of WebEx meetings and mobile units that we that we deal with on a monthly basis.
All right, and this is just a quick look at our overall device count. We have at Cisco a very robust employee choice program. So of course we let our employees choose whichever platform they feel most comfortable with. The device experience team currently manages somewhere around 193,000 devices, actually. I believe the numbers might be a little low on this one. And you can see the breakdown here. We have macOS, iOS, and iPadOS actually account for over 50% of all of the deployed devices. It's very close to a mixed, half and half environment for us.
So we wanted to kind of introduce the team that's responsible for Mac at Cisco, but I also want to talk about something that Cisco really puts a premium on, and that is device experience. That is Rosalie Cook at the top. She is basically our director of device experience, and under her is Ryan Gorman, who is a solutions architect for device experience. And device experience goes across all types of devices, like we talk about Windows, Linux, Mac, mobile. And the idea basically is we want our users to have the best experience on their device. And how do we go about doing that? You can do your best work if the experience you're having allows you to do the best work. And so we really do care about that. The leader of the Mac at Cisco team is Grant Klingbeil.
Yeah, and then rounding out the team, we have our engineering lead, Jacob Davidson. Sylvia Strauss is our QA engineer. Barbara Aguiar, our Mac product owner. And Carol Robinson, who is our Agile genius and our chief cookie officer.
She really does make
amazing cookies.
So we're going to kind of run through two types of typical scenarios for an organization or an enterprise. So the first one is this one. As many of you can attest, adopting a new operating system into your environment is a lot like putting a diaper on a kid. You may not get a whole lot of cooperation. I remember when I used to do that with my kid, it was like putting a diaper on Michael Flatley, legs going everywhere. And it's kind of the same with adopting a macOS. You're not going to get cooperation. When I was with public ed, this was 100% my experience. You would get these questions, what if it breaks my machine? What if I lose my data? What about my apps? Are they still going to work? The bottom one, I don't want to be the only one. Most people didn't have that, but the next to the bottom was a huge one, which was, I can't do it right now. I'm working right now. I'm important. I'm married to a teacher. I think the first time I sent out Nudge, I'm pretty sure she made me sleep on the couch that night. Because she was in the middle of doing something and it was like, you screwed my day. So you get a lot of pushbacks. But when you really look at that, it's really a combination of fear and focus. They're afraid of what's going to happen, or they don't feel like they have time. And people don't like it when you move their cheese, especially when they're eating it. So what we found is if you do your OS adoption right, you get two things. The first one is you get trust in IT and the process. And the second one, which is kind of just as important, is you give a sense of autonomy to the user.
All right. Of course, not all organizations are the same when it comes to the new macOS. Unfortunately for Cisco, there's a lot of excitement in our user base around the release time. Many of our users want to install the new OS, and they want to try things on their devices right away, right on day one, if not before. We actually see a big uptick in requests to join the beta program late in the development cycle of the new OS. And of course, they want to try out the new features and all the bells and whistles and see how they work and things like that. Of course, we do have some more reserved users too who opt for the stability and want to hang back, and that's perfectly fine. It's fine. But still, we have plenty of users who aren't afraid to ride on the cutting edge. So it's a great opportunity for us to get those interested users involved in kicking the tires alongside us.
So as you can see from this slide, when October hits, just like everybody, there's a massive jump from one version of the operating system to the next. That's when Apple's like, here you go, enjoy. So if you look at this one, if you were to compare the difference between when Ventura came out and when Sonoma came out, this is actually a year in the life of two OSs. There's a considerable decrease in the amount of devices that kind of hung on to their previous version when we went from Ventura to Sonoma. We wanted the fleet to be homogenized, but we wanted it to be done quickly. And we were able to do that through three things. The first one is patching. The second one is testing. And lastly, communication.
Before we move on real quick, I did want to just point out also that what you see there for Sonoma, you'll notice a very similar adoption pattern with Ventura as we've built the program over the years to be able to rapidly adopt the new OS versions. Mac at Cisco is an N-1 environment, so we will support only the current production Mac OS and the previous version. Unlike Apple, of course, they serve the two previous versions. But, and we used to be N-2, but by moving to N-1, it allows us to narrow the focus of our support a bit so we can better focus our management efforts and leverage those latest controls that Apple provides without carving out multiple exceptions for older OS versions. As you can see from the distribution shot of our Mac environment, which I had alluded to earlier, even though we're enforcing N-1, it's largely N-0, with the amount of adoption that we get, we have very few stragglers on the previous OS, and most of our users live on the current system. And you know, we've helped them to understand the benefits of keeping their Macs current, keeping them secure and up to date. And so by setting this standard, we prepared them as well to accept that annual upgrade cycle. And for us, it makes it a much more supportable environment by being able to, like I said, narrow that focus into 2 operating systems as opposed to 3.
So, as for patching, we have 2 methods. The first is a config profile that enforces software update to check and download available updates. The second is a more aggressive approach, and that is through the use of Nudge, the greatest third-party tool that was literally built to annoy your user base. When a new release comes out, you know, we configure Nudge to alert the user, give them a deadline to update. And while we don't force our users to the most current OS, or N-0, most users will go ahead and opt to upgrade when prompted with just an update. So if they see that, you know, they got to go to 14.7, but 15 is there, they'll go to 15.
Yeah. And here's just a quick example of how we configure Nudge to enforce the minimum standard OS. We use the JSON version of Nudge. So if we want the stragglers who are still sitting on older versions like OS 11, whoops, hello, sorry about that. There we go, my bad. Okay, so you know, we want to get people who are on 11 or whatever, we're going to bring them up to 14.6. We set that key right there to the required minimum OS version. And then once the new user gets their Nudge, they'll be directed to install the minimum version and not just go looking for the latest version of iOS 11. And to show you how we validate the JSON itself also, we take the MD5 hash of the file and pass it as a script parameter in an enforcement policy. We check to see if the hash is equal, of course, and if they do not, we rewrite the file so that we know that we have the correct configuration in place. And we also, of course, run checks to ensure that they're on the correct version of Nudge, and if not, then we run a policy command. We'll update that.
So we talked about hurdles and questions that users usually throw. Like we said, first it sounds like panic, but they're not alone. You know, those of us in engineering, we have the same fears that everybody else does. You know, we don't want to lose what matters most, your photos. But you know, we also have an advantage in that before we do anything that we force upon our users to adopt, we test and test and test again. And that's how we are comfortable with such rapid adoption.
Yeah, that's true. The testing program is a very big part of it. We have now built out a formal, this is Cisco IT, we have built out a formal QA testing process that we've built up over the past few years. And our QA team is a big part of our pre-release testing. They test every macOS beta, including point releases. And they continue doing this during the year as we get upgrades to ensure that these upgrades are also compatible. They've got a repeatable set of test plans that have been developed that will cover things like Jamf enrollment. They'll cover the trusted device status for us, as the, things like VPN, zero trust, Wi-Fi, the basic supported apps and their workflows, the basic stuff that we deliver when you get a Cisco Mac. They also participate in the Apple Seed for IT program, and they submit bugs to Apple through the Feedback Assistant. They participate in our EAT groups, which is short for Early Access Testing groups. They're dedicated spaces in our WebEx environment where we vet and discuss the latest betas and with our user testers. And they also, our QA team also works with our Apple folks on a regular basis to ensure that the issues are being worked on.
So Chris alluded to something called EAT. And like we said, our QA team, they test every beta release, but EAT is really where we find most of our issues. And EAT stands for our Early Adoption Testers. They have been vital testing partners for many years, even before we had a official formal QA process. So, you know, when the guinea pig's in the cage, and then he gets pulled out, and then he comes back and he's got a human ear sewed on him, I'm pretty sure it's fair to say that none of the other guinea pigs want to be chosen next. So it does say, it is something to say that if the guinea pig raises his little hand and says, pick me, and then he comes back with the human ear, and he tells all the rest of the guys, like, you have no idea how much better I can hear now, then you've basically created a culture of volunteerism, and that's really what EAT is. It's just volunteers who have the capacity and the abilities to act as test subjects. The major advantages of having an EAT program is that you get a much broader base of device use. You know, QA, as much as they can do, there's not a, you know, it's one person or two people, like, you know, being real diligent, but they don't do everything that the people in your company are gonna run into. Second one is you get more feedback to Apple. You know, the more people yell, the more you're gonna get something in return. And then, like I said, you create advocates for rapid adoption. You create a community of people who want to go to the next level.
Yeah. So we'll touch on real quick, what are some of the responsibilities of a good tester? Do you have the bandwidth? Can you still do your job and do this extra work? You know, do you want to stay current and stay, you know, really be right there on the edge? You're comfortable with that bleeding edge of technology, right? You want them to be able to provide good, useful feedback and follow-up, because it's not enough just to post that complaint, oh, my thing broke, and you know, that helps, but when Apple comes back and says, oh, would you try this, or can we get some more information? You want people who are going to respond to that, and we're going to continue to work through the case, hopefully, to its resolution. Our EAT testers also need to be self-supporting. Our standard policy for the help desk is that beta software is not supported. Our regular users must be on production software. So these users have agreed that when they have problems, they're going to, they can reach out to the channel, reach out to their peers. We'll certainly help them if we can, but they have to understand that they can't just go running to the help desk because they've got beta software and will be turned away. Or worse, get bad advice because they don't know what they're testing. And of course, ultimately, you have to be willing to rebuild your system from scratch. If the worst happens, are you comfortable with restoring from backup and building, you know, building a device all by yourself? Luckily, we do have a few hundred people, at least, who are willing to take on all of these challenges. So once you've decided to become an EAT tester, then what happens? Well, first we remove the restrictions on beta software so that you're free to access not only Mac beta releases, but also Microsoft their early release channels for Microsoft, any other beta stuff we're testing. And also they're the first line of testing for our own work. When we create new policies, new deployments, once they come out of the stage, they go to EAT before they go to the wider public. And that is where we really catch the majority of our issues, I think, that are not, the ones that aren't super obvious. Right. You know, I'm sure if you've been doing testing before, you know that you test something on 2 or 3 devices and it's all good, and then you put it out in the field and like, oh, what happened? Well, at least this way we get several hundred variants of active machines and people with different workflows, different habits, different stuff on their stuff. So we just get much better test results at the end of the day, you know. Let's see. Yes, we also add them directly to the WebEx spaces where they can jump in and join the discussions on any of the things we're happen to be testing. We make them a managed Apple ID, and we use those IDs for primarily for them for logging into Feedback Assistant and providing the feedback to Apple so that they know this is a Cisco employee reporting this stuff. So all of our collective feedback is in the Cisco bucket. And the whole autonomy thing, you know, it's good that these are users who are free to take charge of their systems in a way that they don't normally do as a worker. You know, we give our general users have admin rights, so they do have a lot of freedom, really. But, you know, we give a little extended freedom to these folks who are a little more savvy and helping us keep everyone else out of the ditch.
So introducing a new OS into your environment is a lot like bringing your baby home from the hospital. You know, you spent months getting everything ready. You read all the books. You know, you made the room. You painted. You decorated. You got diapers and onesies coming out of your ear. You're ready. And then the baby's in your house, and now it's real. So now what? So it's the same with the new OS, just with a lot less spit up. You know, you've done all the work. You've done all the hopefully. You've done all the hours and hours of testing, QA, EAT, whatever you want to call it. And now Apple's released it to the public. Well, now what? Well, you do what everybody does. You want to show people your pretty new baby. And on Cisco, on day one, we send out communication to all our users announcing that the new OS is here. And this is your chance to really talk about how pretty and beautiful your baby is. It's where we highlight what's new and what's changed, and it's a place where we provide our users to get the assistance and provide them SharePoint with information about the release. So if you can be transparent, if you can highlight what's new, and if you can offer help, then you've really started your users down the right path.
All right. So, and of course, when it comes to a successful OS launch, we have to give a little shout out to Help Cisco. Help Cisco is started, I think it's safe to say it's sort of encompassed the whole support structure that we have, but it started out really the US-based Mac at Cisco Help Desk, which was launched in 2022. We started with 12 Mac specialists available as advisors. They were on schedule for about 12 hours a day. And this was to supplement our contracted general device support for all of Cisco, which we often found Mac users had a very hard time with just general support. There wasn't a lot of Mac OS knowledge. So we particularly hired people who were trained as Apple geniuses, whenever possible. They're not every one of them, but I think most of them. No. They bring a real level of understanding of the platform and experience in helping Mac and iOS users. These guys in action are fantastic. They are so good at taking the most, I hate to say ignorant user, but you know what I mean, the simplest user, and help them through really difficult tasks. So those guys are really amazing. We expanded the desk to the UK back in earlier this year, actually, and we're planning to expand this at some point to Asia Pacific so that we've got global Mac-specific support. And one of the other keys is support. Okay, pardon me while I process myself for a second here. One of the keys here is having vendor support for your software products. How many of us have had to hold back a new release because some other product wasn't ready? Anybody? I know I've been in this boat, right? Yeah, that's a difficult place to be. I like to think that maybe improving somewhat with the growth of Mac and Enterprise. I think I hear a little less than we used to see 10 years ago with that sort of problem. But of course, some vendors, they still lag behind. They still wait for production to start testing and things like that. So when looking at things, and we don't always have the power to choose our vendors, obviously, but sometimes we do. So when we're evaluating these things, I see these things as really key performance indicators. Do they have an SLA for Mac OS support? Will they promise that they will be ready, or do their best to be ready? If not, what's their historical release time look like? I've dealt with companies who've needed another couple of weeks. That's okay, that's fine. Another couple of months, that's a whole other story, right? Do they participate in the Apple beta programs? I just don't even know why you wouldn't. But it's a good question to ask. And do they use current macOS frameworks, extensions, whatever? Are they keeping their code current? Or are they clinging to something that was deprecated 3 years ago that might die at any moment? There was another one. Yes, oh, are they signing their packages correctly? You know, are they delivering you a product that you can deploy without a lot of finagling? Do they have MDM deployment plans? I've looked at a couple things recently that just were simply not built for that, at least not as far as the teams had put them together, leaving that to me to figure out how to roll it up and deliver it, you know. So is that the last one? That was the last one. So, you know, I'm hesitant to pick on vendors too much because I've done that a lot over the years. But you know, if the answer to these questions is no, I would be reconsidering that relationship and its value. You know, there are plenty of great products. No, it doesn't answer everybody's question, I realize. But there are, in the larger world of IT, there's security products, there's lots of choices out there. You don't, hopefully, necessarily have to stay with someone who treats their Mac software as a side project. Let me get off my soapbox now. Luckily, at Cisco, we eat a lot of our own dog food, as they say. So we're fortunate we have communication channels with our development teams for various Cisco products like our Duo SSO or secure client, secure endpoint products, even the WebEx. So that's a plus for us, and at least we have those channels ready. But you know, whether the devs are your in-house people or they're your third party and you're just you know, their client, it's important to talk to them early on in the development process to see what they're doing. Is there anything that you can help with? Sometimes we will always share our issues that we find with the development team. Say, hey, we ran into this, what about it? And they will hopefully respond with some beta code that we can test, and we can then take to our EAT team and vet it for them. And all of that process, so you know, that's participating in that development as much as they will allow us. All that helps to make sure their software is ready for launch day, you know. So we both gain at the end of the day with that participation.
So we are very fortunate at Cisco to have amazing leadership. I feel like I'm contractually obligated at every JNUC convention to talk about Fletcher Prevent, but we're very lucky that we have leadership high up that really believes in Mac and really believes in an Apple environment.
Yeah, we don't have to fight the bite-in.
No, we don't have to fight that. So we're very fortunate. And many times, those people up at the top, they drive the expectation for user experience. You know, however, you know, it's our jobs as Mac administrators to kind of show them what can be accomplished beyond their expectations. In order to do so, you know, you have to prove that it can be done. And this can be accomplished by consistent, diligent, thorough testing. We've said that a lot. Constant communication with all your stakeholders at every level, and really being proactive before you have to be reactive. Once you've shown you can do these things successfully, then it really becomes part of your culture, and culture is really what you're trying to build.
That's true. So, at this point, I'm sure at least one of you is wondering how our Sequoia adoption is going. We've definitely followed our testing program again this year, and actually as of Monday, we were at 16,000 devices on Sequoia, roughly 26% of our fleet. Now, of course, this uptake is a bit slower than it has been in previous years. We think there's a couple of reasons for that, one of which may be people sort of hanging out waiting for Apple Intelligence before they dive in. But of course, we've run into the firewall issues that I'm sure everyone has heard of and experienced. And you know, so that might be also sort of putting the brakes on it a little bit. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, actually, for us, from our perspective. We have not had to stop the adoption. We have not stepped in and said, do not install this operating system. We have posted some workarounds, like a tool to toggle the firewall in self-service, which has helped. That's pretty much mitigated most people's issues with things like SSH or whatever. We just say, if you got a SSH, turn the firewall, go, comes back on, or turn it back on when you're done, or it'll come back on automatically. But it's been sufficient for most people to continue their work, and that allows us to continue working with the OS and to continue submitting more feedback to Apple and pressing them to get a fix on this thing.
So, some final thoughts. I'm sure you're like, yeah, this is over. Just kidding. So, first thing, rapid OS adoption, it's got its challenges, but it can be achieved with planning, adaptability, and testing. Reach out to your Apple rep and ask how you can participate in Appleseed for IT. Oh yeah, testing. Testing is huge. If you don't have a formal QA, which I understand, not everybody can have formal QA. You know, some people have more resources. You know, we're very fortunate; we have lots of resources. Other people may literally have campus technologists and things like that. But you can still create a kind of EAT program with your best power users.
Yeah, I will say that when I started at Cisco 6 years ago, that's what we had. We had EAT and us, and that was it. Yeah. 2 engineers and an EAT group. But, you know, we managed and we built it from there. You got to start somewhere.
Yes. But we have an amazing QA engineer named Sylvia, and we're keeping her forever. Don't you guys even think about keeping her away. So Jamf is there. Use it, you know. They have a great history, and I'm just saying that because I'm at a Jamf conference. They have a great history of being day one ready. But they're also a huge resource for finding potential pitfalls, whether it be in hardware or software. And they can and will help you plan around any issues that you're trying to avoid. Communication with your users will keep people on the same page with regard to your ability to adopt a new OS. So always be in constant communication with your fleet.
Yeah, I think that's important to quell people's anxieties about the changes. You know, I've always found that a really open dialogue with your user base really helps people bring along. We're all adults. Most of them understand if you've got a challenge, you can work with it, you know. I think it's when we hide that and when we try not to tell people there's an issue that you start building a reputation for being removed.
Right.
And
yeah, if you can be as transparent as possible, there's nothing but positives with that. And Chris's favorite thing, working with your vendors as partners in their development process, or like you said, or get better vendors.
Yeah.
And this one is big. Rome wasn't built in a day. We did not create this EAT QA rapid process in like 6 months. You know, this has been years and years in the making. It's something that, you know, if you're dedicated to do, you're going to have to understand that it's going to take a while. But that's good because, you know, anything that takes time and lots of effort is way better than something that just happens really fast. If you put in the work, you're going to find more things. So just understand that, like I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. This is not something that you're just going to be able to go back and turn on tomorrow and everything's going to be okay. So thank you guys for spending part of your afternoon with us. We really appreciate it. I'm speaking for myself. This is my first presentation in front of people. I really enjoyed it. Thank you all for coming.
Good job. That was great. We have a few minutes left. If we have any questions, comments.
Hey, Chris and Jonathan, fantastic presentation. Really enjoyed it. Two quick questions. Number one is, I believe some of your folks that work for the U.S. federal government probably have their own Jamf instance. So, you know, how do you collaborate with that group to ensure that y'all's innovations make their way over to GGSG? And question number two is, you mentioned that you create managed Apple accounts for your EAT enrollees. So you know where that's going. Like, what is the longer-term thinking with regards to federation, automated provisioning, just in general? Thank you.
Okay. As far as federation, we are working on that. It's it's a big process if you've started digging into it, but we are working towards that end to where we will hopefully have all our Mac users on managed Apple IDs. It's a good question what we'll do with the ones we have because they're slightly different. What we're basically, rather than your email, we've created the ID itself with an appended _ABM. So, rather than chkemp at Cisco, it would be chkemp_ABM. And so we'll have to figure out are we going to migrate them over, or are we going to keep them separate for some reason? I imagine they'd probably be part of a migration process, but that's still kind of to be determined. And what was the other question real quick?
The government.
Oh, the GTS people, right, yeah. We do have a government wing, and they do have their own Jamf server and with their own Jamf admins. We meet with them regularly and discuss what we're doing. They tend to follow what we're doing, I think, for the most part. So we will, within the confines of what you can do in government, I think there's certainly have their own set of restrictions, so they can't do everything that we do. But within the confines of what they can do, they usually take their lead from us. Yes.
Also, a couple of quick questions. First off, how do you track your EAT users in terms of partitioning them off from the rest of users? So, say Sylvia has a new computer. Is that just through a different pre-stage? Is that manually assigned? Do you have automation around that, so you don't necessarily have to touch it every time one of your testers gets a new machine, or Borks went up, has to rebuild it, things like that. And then the second question would be, what's your nudge deadlines? Do you give folks 2 weeks to do it, 30 days? Do you have a cleanup process and enforcement involved for that?
I'll answer the nudge question, because that's one thing I actually know what I'm talking about. So most of the time, it's 30 days for nudge. I mean, if it's like not severe, but if it's a security thing that we need to kind of kick in the pants, it's usually about 2 weeks. But most of the time, it's 30 days. And then you can answer the more difficult question.
Remind me, that was?
It was how you organize your...
Right, how we differentiate the EAT users. Right. If I remember correctly, I believe it's user-based, although it's not. Our situation is a little odd because we don't have a directory server. So we import our users in to Jamf. But it is essentially a user-based restriction. When you're in the group, you get put into that, and then that group, which is actually in Jamf, is actually a static user group. Yeah. And then that's how we differentiate between their machines. And whether or not they actually install anything is totally optional. We just basically remove the restrictions. Yeah. So, but you could have one for testing and one that's just a regular Mac device, standard issue. We have another one? Okay.
People actually care.
I've got two questions. First is, why did you choose Nudge? Was it just the best tool that was available at the time? I know you guys have some talented people there. You could have written your own tool. You could have chosen other tools, but any particular reason why you chose Nudge?
I mean, when I started 3 years ago, we already had Nudge. So I'm going to assume we did it because it was the cool thing to use. And it was easy.
Something like that.
It was easy to configure, and it was like, what can we do that we don't have to work as hard to use? Yeah. That would be my guess, is that we saw Nudge and we're like, well, this is a great tool, and then we decided to use it.
We've used a couple of the open source tools along the way. And yeah, when we adopted Nudge, it was, I think, the more robust messaging. We don't like plain dumb little notifications for those kinds of things. So, having it be a little more configurable, a little prettier delivery is part of the whole user experience thing. And I think Nudge was just chosen because it was solid and it was a good product.
Now, we will send out messaging to the device through through other tools to say, like, hey, we can see that you're way over, and we'll say, like, hey, you need to kick it in the pants and go to the next OS. But Nudge is really the one where we for sure tell them.
Yeah, and then just to plug, a quick plug, because why not? We also use IBM Notifier.
Yeah, that's
if we need to get really fancy.
How do you choose your beta testers? Is it just you guys are in the IT department, so you're automatically beta testers, or do you have like a more formalized method?
We kind of are, but we do. Actually, we don't test on IT as a whole. Several of our groups actually do.
Yeah.
But then they're also more cross-platform. So like, our antivirus solution, as I recall, they have all of IT in a test group for the initial deployment.
But I mean,
same concept.
But I mean, if we had somebody that was in like legal or sales and they wanted to be an EAT tester, we wouldn't tell them no.
No, I mean, it's totally voluntary. Anybody can be a EAT. All you have to do is go in and sign up.
It's just you have to accept the risks.
Yeah.
You have to accept the risks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have one way back there.
So we have one in the back there.
How are you doing with the time? Just conscious the other.
You have about 4.5.
I see 4.5 down here.
Okay. So last question, is that okay?
There's a couple.
There's a couple over there.
A couple. Okay. Where is it? 1 and 2. Okay.
We'll talk until they kick us out. It's okay.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for the session. I was just curious, 60,000 Macs and you give everybody admin access.
Yeah.
I have a list of developers who would run a Jamf remove framework in 2 seconds if I did that. So I'm curious what that has looked like for Cisco, which is much larger than us.
If you do that, you will no longer be a trusted device. And you will not have access to Cisco stuff anymore. So it's really, the stick is big enough, I think. Zero Trust Access has really helped, I think, in a certain way to add a little more weight to that, don't mess with the enrollment. Because, yeah, the minute you do that, you start breaking your certificates and everything,
Yeah, when I applied for this job 3 years ago and found out that they had admin rights to everybody, I was like, please hire me. Because I had just come working from a school district where I think I was one of 2 people in the entire district who had admin rights to do anything. And trying to get folks to update without admin rights, I was like, oh my God. So.
I mean, we try to be as light touch as we can. We definitely manage some things. There are definitely profiles on there, and there's definitely things we will not allow you to do. But generally speaking, we try to allow people as much as they can. And we have a lot of engineers and things on staff as well. So, restricting them too much, you could easily get in a situation where they're messing with their job, that kind of thing. You don't want to do that. So.
It goes back to that whole device experience thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick question. Thanks again for the presentation. With regard to data migration from old systems to new systems, can you speak to that? Ooh. Is that a concern? How do you manage that?
Thank you. Good night.
Is he talking about migration?
No, we can talk about it. I mean, it's a challenge. It's something we're trying to work with, honestly. Migration Assistant was semi-acceptable for a while. It's no longer really that acceptable because it breaks MDM. You have to re-enroll if you use it. We don't have a good replacement. We do have cloud storage. We're using OneDrive, Box. We are encouraging our users to put as much into a secured cloud as possible.
Code 42.
Code 42 we have for backup. That's another source of getting stuff back. Not the most satisfying experience.
Still.
We'll say, it's usually slow. But we have some options, but we're still looking for a good option, to be honest. And we've been working with Apple for a while to try and see if they could do something to improve. Migration Assistant, Apple, please, we still would like to have management for this thing so that we could say, don't do this, don't do that. We'll see. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge. People still get through.
Yeah.
But we had, for a long time, we had one workflow that we don't show you here is we block Migration Assistant as using a software restriction. But we have a tool that allows you to enable it. And so the initial, I set this up a long time ago when I first started here. And the initial thing was basically to force people to read instructions to say, uncheck these boxes, copy only your user folder and nothing else. And that would get you a clean migration.
But people don't read.
Well, some people don't read. That's always the case. And those are the ones that end up calling the help desk. But actually, I think it's been okay. It works, and the tool itself was just a little thing to put you into a group where you're approved. It says, I've accepted the risk. Okay, fine, you're in this group. And from that on, you are able to run Migration Assistant as much as you want.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you all for coming. Very much appreciate it. You guys have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference.